Startup Hub is a free educational project by Template Monster. We've started a series of free webinars for your business. Don't miss the opportunity to spend a mind-shifting hour with your favorite bloggers and ask them a question or two. Get all secrets of the influencers unlocked.
Hi, I'm Jeff Bell from Startup Hub, free educational project by Template Monster. Joining me today is Matt Ruby, the founder and CEO of the revolutionary next-gen startup Vooza. So let's get right to it. What helped you build such a futuristic vision? Or should I say, what helped you become a visionary?
I think it's my willingness to embrace failure. I think, as we know in the startup world, failure is really the key to success. You've got to fail over and over again in order to learn. And I like to say that you can look at how often I failed and how much I fail and look at that and know how smart I've become. So I think that's really the basis of everything that's happened to me in the startup world, is my willingness to just say, failure, I'm with you.
Right, so fail as much as you can. So what's the story behind your most recent app, Vooza? What's it about?
Well, Vooza, we've pivoted a few times. We started off with an online dating app for drones that was called Dromance. Yeah, we rounded some problems with the FAA though on that, and so we had to pivot. Then we started up a meditation app that was called Guru, which is like Uber, but for meditation. So you could press a button and have someone else do your meditating for you. Then we got sued by the Dalai Lama. We had to pivot again from that. And so now we're working on Vooza, which is basically an app that you install on your phone, and then we steal your data and we sell it to both the NSA and to spammers located in either Eastern Europe or Asia.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. What would be the #1 lesson every startupper needs to learn?
The #1 lesson. I think the most important thing you need to know is to use buzzwords as much as possible. I mean, if you want to show people that you're really in the know and an early adopter, you have to start talking right now about bots, artificial intelligence, big data, wearable tech, and you need to work those phrases into sentences as often as you can. It really doesn't matter if you have any reason to do it. It's just more showing, it's indicating to the world, wow, this guy really knows what people are writing about at tech blogs. And that, I always say, is 80% of the path to success.
Right. How do you come up with an idea, and you have a great experience in it? How do you come up with an idea for a unicorn startup or even for a griffin startup?
Right. Well, that's what I'm big on pitching, is the griffin startup, because unicorn startups, now there's dozens of them out there. I always ask, how can we take things to the next level? How can you be a griffin?
You don't want to be just the next Uber. You want to be bigger.
Yeah, you're just another unicorn. You're really not unique.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think the key is to just try to be as huge as possible. To first of all, don't focus on making money. Just ignore that for now. What you really want to do is staff up. You want to get funding. I always say the more money that you can borrow from people, the more of a success you are in life. That's why I have 3 mortgages on my house, because I always tell people this is the path to IPOing.
So what are your plans for IPO then?
To go big, go huge. I mean, I plan on ringing the bell at NASDAQ, at least a few times. And, I think really just the idea is to be a corporate success and be able to answer to shareholders. Because what I found is that, the structure of being a public company, it's really, you're helping the world. You're making the world a better place. You're improving things. You're answering to shareholders who really are looking at the long term, what's going to be best for the planet, what's going to be best for our society, and that's the realm that I want to be in. This I'm not about let's make a profit tomorrow. I'm more about let's borrow money, and maybe 10 years from now we can build a spaceship together.
Right. I'm with you, man. So what represents the corporate culture of Vooza perfectly?
I think it's the free snacks that we have. We give people, like there's Cheetos, there's, we have one of those Nespresso machines, so you can make your own coffee right there. We have an in-house masseuse. We do mindfulness classes, ping pong tables, beanbag chairs. I think, we do your laundry for you. We basically treat our employees as if they're 5 years old, and they really respond to that well, because they're extremely mature. So it's kind of a perfect fit. But yeah, I would say the perks that we have at our office are really what helps us, kind of attract and retain moderately talented people.
Right, moderately. How do you become an influencer, a thought leader in a modern tech world?
The first big step is you just start saying that you are one. I always say you fake it till you make it. So I just go out and tell people, hey, I'm a thought leader. Hey, I'm an innovator. Hey, I'm a director of the future. And people are like, oh, well, I mean, if it's on his business card, it's probably true, right? And I think that's what makes me such an idea evangelist, as I like to say.
Evangelist, it's even better. It's hotter than the thought leader, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you get your inspiration? It's a full-time job being a thought leader, Where do you get inspiration? What inspires you most?
Samurai warriors. And also kamikaze pilots. I'm very influenced by Eastern culture and Eastern philosophy, and so I try to bring out those ideas of, how can I bring honor, ritual suicide, and just sort of that sort of notion of there's nothing more important to me than my work, and bring that into my day-to-day life. And then I would also say one of my other big influences is Woody Woodpecker, because I really admire his resilience in constantly just sort of chipping away at that tree and just, taking his beak and just going away at that tree all the time. Because I think there's a real lesson for people in the startup world about how you have to iterate over and over again and just sort of keep banging your head against that wall until eventually either that wall caves in or you get a concussion. Because either way you win, really.
Yes. So what's the most challenging thing? I know it's easy for you, but what's the most challenging thing in being a revolutionary startup and SEO for a revolutionary startup?
What's the easiest thing?
The most challenging thing.
The most challenging thing. Oh boy, it's probably all the press attention. There's a lot. I every day on the way into work, there's bloggers, there's paparazzi, there's people who, are wanting quotes, wanting me to Snapchat with them or just trying to take a photo with me, And so it's probably a little bit of, putting up with that sort of media attention and the fans. But I also realize without them, I wouldn't be where I am. So, I have a policy where I'm willing to take, selfies for at least 5 minutes, but then please let me go back to eating my meal. At that point, I think that's sort of a good balance. But, it's the nature of the beast. It's part of what you get for being so successful and for building such a great company. There's going to be a lot of attention from the masses. But right. I always say I'm okay with the riffraff.
Mm-hmm. What traits of character do you and other great CEOs of different companies have in common?
Well, I mean, like Steve Jobs, I always wear a black turtleneck. So I think that's sort of a basic one. I'm a big fan of Peter Thiel, who is at PayPal. We have a lot in common. I also resent the media and freedom of speech, and I'm very into funding secret lawsuits against people who write anything that I disapprove of, but not having my name behind it and using celebrities as a front for that. I think it's a really noble way of fighting for the cause of personal privacy, so I respect that a lot. And boy, what other CEOs? I guess Mark Zuckerberg, just because he puts tape over his camera. And so I think that just sort of proves that the NSA is spying on everyone, and even the head of Facebook kind of knows it. So I respect that.
Yeah. So thank you for taking the tape of your camera for this webinar today.
Right. It'll go right on afterwards, but
yeah, sure. So yeah, this was the goofy, pretentious startup part of our webinar, just to give you guys the idea of what Vooza does. Huffington Post said it's the most hilarious tech startup spoof ever. Forbes magazine says that the guys are comedic geniuses. And today I'm so happy to introduce you to Matt Ruby from Vooza, and let's get to the real webinar. So hi.
I get to beat myself up? All right, hold on. I got to take my turtleneck off then. All right, that's better.
I won't take the shirt off because I
no. It's just when I wear the turtleneck, I have to be that guy. So I have to return to myself. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. We at Startup Hub are huge fans, and so let's get right to it. Have you ever noticed and caught yourself using the buzzwords that you hate so much?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, like I'd say two that I wind up using are content and monetize, which I so often words that I associate with, silly people who are saying nothing. But yeah, I mean, I do feel like sometimes there's just no better word for a situation, so I wind up using those at least once in a while. But I think sometimes it's just more an awareness of like, it's okay to use a buzzword if you just have no better option. But if you're using it just because you don't know what you're saying or just to sound important, that's when it's really a problem, I think.
Right. So can you explain in easy terms how buzzwords harm businesses, why you shouldn't use them, and try to explain things in easy terms?
I mean, I think a good example is to think about how people talk about legalese, like when lawyers are talking to each other, or when you read a contract, or sort of, it just sort of creates this barrier where it's like an insular club that people in that industry maybe can talk to each other and understand each other, but like outside of the industry, it just sounds like a foreign language. And I think it's intimidating and a turnoff, and sort of like is a way to shut down conversations or to exclude people who maybe don't have the same vocabulary or knowledge of buzzwords that you do. And I think the more valuable your ideas are, the less you need to rely on jargon to get them across, the more you can sort of explain things simply and directly in a way that anyone can understand.
What should one do if you used a buzzword in your brand name and after a while it's not trendy anymore, it went out of fashion? What should you do? You might have guessed that I'm talking about Startup Hub, actually.
What's the problem? The hub?
The startup, the hub, everything.
I kind of like it. It's there's a real clarity there, at least.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that name specifically, and I think sometimes names are overvalued. I mean, I think a lot of companies that have blown up and become huge, the names are pretty dumb, but now we're just so used to the actual value that the service is providing, we just get used to it.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the Vooza name?
It's just a word that I made up years ago, and the domain name was available, and it sounded like
surprisingly.
Yeah. A funny story is like the week before we launched, I had owned the domain name for maybe like 6 years before we actually launched the site that's up now, and never heard anything about it. And then the week before we were ready to launch the site, I got an offer for the domain for like a fairly decent amount of money, but we had already gone far enough down the path that I was like, no, I don't want to sell it now. But it's just funny to have a domain for 6 years and no one offers you anything, and then the week before you launch, it's like, hey, you want to sell that?
Yeah. So your main product, so to say, are the funny videos you produce. It's the weekly thing, I think. And so how do you research topics for your videos? Is there some kind of system behind the research, and how do you come up with ideas?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a system as much as, a lot of the ideas start with me, but I do have some writers that I work with. But I'm sort of keeping a folder all the time of, based on either reading different, tech blogs or articles I come across, or conversations that I have in real life if I'm at, tech conferences. And I used to work in the startup world. So it's just sort of like paying attention to what's going on. And a lot of times it's just seeing an article or a quote that almost sounds like a Vooza episode. It just seems like something ridiculous is happening. Or I'll read an article about programmers who are drinking meal replacement drinks so they don't have to leave their keyboard at any moment. And it's just like, okay, this already sounds like a Vooza episode. let's just take the reality and maybe make it like 10% more absurd.
I see. It looks like your business is built on pure talent and like humor, and you developed it being a stand-upper and so on and so forth. So can a regular person, like me, without any background in comedy, make videos of this kind to promote their product? What would you recommend for such people?
I don't know. I think everyone on our team is comedians and has performed a ton, and so it's like it's a craft in its own way. I don't think you'd bring a comedian in and ask them to be a programmer and like expect them in like a day to turn out some great code. So I think there is something to be said for letting people who are experts at what they do what they do. I think sometimes there's just an element of just trying to have a sense of humor about what, even if you're making like a more serious video or an explainer video, just having a light tone or trying to use language that makes it seem like you're not positioning yourself as being more than you are, and just sounding human, and throwing in a couple jokes here or there, I think is sort of like a good middle ground for a lot of people. Instead of everyone in the tech world seems not everyone, but a lot of times people are really taking themselves super seriously, and there's a lot of pretension. And I think if you can just sort of take, if not actually trying to be funny, just take that tone that a stand-up comedian or a comedy show takes of having a sense of humor and not taking yourself too seriously, and using plain language and making fun of yourself a little bit, or just coming across as human. I think all those things will help set you apart from the typical sort of tech video world. Yeah,
because sometimes when people try too hard to be funny, it's kind of sad. So yeah, it makes sense.
It can be a little painful. Yeah.
How do you like find the line? Well, when a person films a video, they think it's funny. They believe to that soul that it's funny. How do you prove that? Do you give your videos before publishing them? Do you give them to some, I don't know, test focus group, or what's the process there?
No, I mean, we usually, sometimes we'll collaborate on scripts or, edits. There's collaborations on like which takes do we want to use. For the most part, if we edit something, where you're confident enough in it to put it out into the world. I think also just this is where performing live comes in handy too, of doing stand-up and being on stage and kind of learning what's funny and what's not funny in front of a room full of people. And it kind of, you develop a certain sort of ear for what's going to work or what's not working, or at the very least what you think is funny. And then if you're confident that something's funny, and sometimes that's good enough to just put it out into the world, and you hope everyone else agrees with you. But even if not, you're like, hey, that's the thing that I wanted to make, and I thought it was funny and good, and so I'm putting it out there.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, from me personally, who's your favorite comedian and why?
I mean, I think right now Bill Burr is probably the best stand-up comedian who's out there. Louis C.K. is great too. Norm Macdonald I love. There's a guy named John Mulaney who's really great. As far as more TV or film, I love Larry David. Curb Your Enthusiasm's probably my favorite show, and Woody Allen I think was a great director, and sort of Christopher Guest and the Spinal Tap and Best in Show, and those sort of mockumentary style movies were definitely very influential on me.
Yeah. What are the best channels that you found most efficient in distributing video content, promotional video content on the web? Because I noticed that some of your stuff you post on Vooza.com, some of it you put on YouTube, and what are the best ways to distribute your promo content?
Yeah, I mean, best is a tough word. We put all our stuff up exclusively at Vooza.com at first, just because we want to sort of own that experience of not just being lost in the YouTube sandbox, sure, but having our own sort of area and being able to like encourage people to watch our other videos and to sign up on our email list and follow us on social media. And also we show advertiser videos there too. So as post-roll videos, they'll be able to see, other videos that we've made, sponsored content. So for us, it's sort of about owning that experience. And then later on, we'll put the videos up on YouTube. Facebook recently has become a really good way to spread, to distribute videos and get attention. A lot of people obviously are spending time there as sort of, instead of having people need to go to your site, it's a way to reach them, where they're spending time already. And then, unfortunately, it's like part of the challenge is I think you just got to, get your videos up everywhere. We put them up at AOL licenses our content, and then Amazon and Daily Motion. And so we're kind of just syndicating the videos. After a while, they wind up going everywhere.
Right. So for people who maybe want to start their own, I don't know, agency creating promotional videos, or for people who want to create promotional videos for themselves, what were the, I don't know, the pitfalls that you didn't know about when you were getting into it, and that you can advise people to, I don't know, to check out, and what were the pitfalls that you fell into?
Sure. I mean, I think it relates to startup life in a lot of ways, in that just getting real world feedback as soon as possible. And again, to go back to the buzzwords, but like a minimal viable product, and like, what's the smallest thing you can make for the cheapest amount of money and the lowest investment, and then put it out into the world and see if people really like it and respond to it. I think, I think there's always that temptation to like, no, I'm going to make something brilliant. I'm going to spend all this time writing a perfect script, and I'm going to have the perfect crew. I'm going to spend a lot of money doing the shoot. And we're going to do all this. Whereas like sometimes you're better off just making something cheap and putting it out into the world. And, if the idea is good, you'll get that feedback that will tell you like, oh, this is really good. It's worth more investment. It's worth more time. And I think sometimes that's a mistake that I've fallen into, of like trying to create a masterpiece and spending, too much time planning and, trying to shoot stuff with a big budget, as opposed to like, okay, what's the cheapest, quickest thing I can make and put it out into the world and see if people dig it.
Right. So for people, continuing the story of the person who starts their own agency or wants to promote their product, when you're just in the very beginning, there won't be a lot of exposure. And what ways did you use, and what ways do you recommend using to get the traction going, to get the word out in the world about your business?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is to try to figure out a way to be sustainable, to keep making something over and over again. I think to almost look at the podcast model of, it's not like someone's like, I put out one podcast, I really hope it takes off and it's huge. It's like, good luck with that, because once it's out there, then it's just sitting there, versus someone who's like, I'm going to put out a new podcast every week for 2 years, regardless of, that's just the thing that I'm going to do. And recognizing that it might take 6 months to pick up some traction, or even a year before people really start to notice it. But having that sort of weekly or daily or monthly or whatever regular sort of addition where you're picking up steam all along, you're sort of, a train that keeps going, as opposed to just making one stop and thinking that's all you need to do. So it's not easy though. It's hard, I think, but there's so much media out there right now that I think there's some real power in like sort of sticking around and being sustainable and just kind of going after the same people slowly over time and building organically. And, then, that's where, having an email list or social media following and kind of, just sort of keeping your name at the top of people's minds, just because it's easy to forget. If you make something really good, you can put it out there, but if it's out there and done, then it just sort of recedes into the background.
Right. Because the Twitter feed, it's like it's very fast, so you need to come up with new things all the time. So Vooza did promotional videos for companies like MailChimp, for for Turkish Airlines, and so many more. What are the keys of a successful promotional video, in your opinion?
I think for us, I'll tell you what we tell our clients is I always like to let the funny part lead the way over the informational part. And that it really depends on the goals, but a lot of times the companies we're working with, they want to make a fun video that gets shared. And I always tell people, it's like, the heavier the plug, the product mention, the less likely people are to share it. So it's trying to create that balance where you're mentioning the client and you're getting their message across, but you're also doing it where it's embedded into an episode where it feels organic and natural and not too heavy and not too over the top. And the rest of the video is funny and like it feels like it fits in. So and I think we've done a good job with that. I think, we've had, a lot of times people say our sponsored videos are some of their favorite episodes, which is what we're going for. Is we don't want it to be like, our viewers like, oh great, it's one of the sponsored ones that's going to suck. It's like a lot of times they're just as funny or funnier than the regular episodes, and also it gives us a little more budget to play around with. So sometimes we can do, more interesting things on the sponsored episodes. And I think, similar to what I was saying before, just telling the clients, like, what can we do that's going to be human? What can we do that's going to make you sound like funny and like real people and like you get it, for lack of a better term, as opposed to what so much marketing does, which is people standing up there and be like, we're the best, we're number one, you need to use us, we'll change it. And there's just sort of like this whole sort of facade of something that comes across as kind of phony. And so I think there's a way to reach people that's a little bit more organic and human and funny, and hopefully we help our clients do that.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. It's they are one of my favorite episodes. So
right.
I wanted to ask. What do you think that viral video can be designed intentionally, or is it just the blind luck?
I think you can aim for virality, but anyone who guarantees it is probably conning you a little bit. I don't think there's a way to guarantee that you're making a viral video. I think what you can do is aim to make a really good video, a video that seems really shareable, or something that you think people will respond to and want to pass along to others. But the idea that you can just, guarantee a viral video, I think is really tough, unless it's a bunch of cute dogs, playing pranks on each other while girls in bikinis jump around in the background or something like that. I don't know, but
that's a great video right there.
Yeah, I know. That's someone is giving that pitch right now somewhere on Madison Avenue. But I mean, I think I think also we're fooled a lot. The metrics we use are kind of goosed a little bit, or a lot of these videos that wind up getting millions of views, you're like, how are these real people watching them? Who's where are these views coming from? And if someone watches 2 seconds of something and turns it off, is that as valuable as someone who watches 40 minutes of something? And I think there's the tech world is starting to realize now a lot of the metrics we've used for attention and engagement and views and clicks and all that stuff is easy to doctor, or sometimes doesn't have a basis in real value. So I think that's something people will start to figure out over the next few years, of how to measure that sort of thing in a way that's more productive, I guess.
Yeah. Can you share, to continue this topic, can you share one success story when the promotional video, or just one of your funny videos, it went into the world and it behaved even better and it scored even more than you expected it to?
Sure. We did a video for App Dynamics about our coders at Vooza and how they view their code as poetry. And it involved a poetry slam sort of event where they were reading poems about coding. And it was a fun video, and it actually wound up, especially through AOL, it wound up getting a ton of views, and within a month it gotten millions of views and was really blowing up in a way that was great to see, that it was a sponsored video, but people were responding to it. It was it's one of, if not the most popular video that we've ever made, and it's one that we made for a sponsor. And so it's great when you get to collaborate with a client in that way, and then also your viewers really dig it too.
Yeah. Do you think the regular sponsor, the regular owner of a big corporation, do they become more likely to get a funny video instead of just regular advertising with dogs and naked chicks in it, in your opinion?
I mean, I think there's a lot of, it depends on the person. I think more and more people are realizing the value. I think more and more people are realizing the value of video online, and realizing that they need to sort of have video marketing or content or promotional videos or something in that direction. And then I think people are also aware that there's just a lot of noise out there, and that comedy is a great way to sort of break through the clutter of all this other content of people being serious and talking about how they're the best and their product is essential and all this other stuff. Whereas you can come in with a sense of humor, you're going to set yourself apart from the pack. So I think people are seeing value in that way.
Yeah. In your opinion, what's the minimum skill set required to record a successful promotional video, to create one?
I mean, get a decent quality camera, put it on a tripod, don't have it be shaky. I think probably my biggest pet peeve is audio quality. I think a lot of people think they can just be in a room and use the on-camera microphone, and it winds up sounding like they're in a a cave somewhere or something. So like, have good audio. Get someone who understands, boom mics or lav mics or something where you can actually hear people well. And then to go back to sort of like the actual developing an app model, like just, be willing to fail and put stuff out there and iterate a lot, and, keep making stuff and you'll get better. We work with a company called Wistia. It's where we host all our videos, and they have some great tutorials on their site targeted at like, tech companies or startups or small businesses who are trying to make videos, and sort of teaching them like, here's what you can do and how you can do it simply. So that's a good resource to check out too at wistia.com. And yeah, I don't know, trial and error. It's like everything else, get out, just start making things, and you'll start learning right away. Oh, this didn't work, or this did work, and keep doing it, and that's how you get better at something.
Yeah. Do you think that promotional videos are a good way to promote any product, or some categories of products maybe that for a fact because you tried it, or I don't know, that this category is harder or is impossible to create a promotional video about the successful one?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Are successful videos a good way to promote any product, or other categories of products that just aren't made to have a promotional video about them, a funny one?
Right. I'm a believer that like humor works everywhere, and whatever situation, even if something seems really serious, sometimes it's nice to have like a comedic take. And I don't know, I guess maybe if you run like a nuclear power plant or something, maybe you need to stay a more serious tone. But yeah, and also I think a lot of times too, it depends on the purpose. Like there can be sort of two different, maybe you don't need one video that does everything for your company. Maybe you have one video or a series of videos that's more serious, that explains what your product does for people who already know about it. But maybe you make a funny video or something more comedic that's shareable for people who've never heard of your product, just so you get in front of people for the first time. A lot of times that can be a good way to like have people hear your name and know about you, and drive them to your site or somewhere else. And then once they get there, then you can really put them in the sales funnel, or whatever you want to call it, of having more serious videos where people are, maybe it's a little bit drier, more informative at that point.
What are the keys of making product placement in a promotional video unobtrusive? I don't know.
Yeah. We try to keep the plugs part of the videos to 30 seconds or less. We try to have it in the second half of the video, so it's not like you're watching and in like the first 10 seconds it just totally seems like an ad. And we try to make the video actually funny, and we try to integrate the plug or the brand in a way that seems like fairly organic, and not just like shoehorned into something where it makes no sense. And we work with our clients on, they get script approval, and we make sure that it's something that seems like aligned with what they're saying. So I think it comes across as sort of like a cohesive piece, where it takes a little bit more time on the front end to make sure that we're collaborating in a way that everyone's happy with. But I think you can see it in the final product. It feels fairly seamless about how we integrate, the different products we mentioned into the show.
You mentioned parts of it already, but what's the minimum budget if a person wants to make a video for themselves? What's the minimum budget you need to create a promotional video for yourself? Like the mic, the camera, and so on, to sum it up.
Sure. I mean, I think it depends on, you can do stuff cheaply for a few $100s. It'll probably look cheap, sort of thing. You could even film yourself on an iPhone and just put that up there. If it's something where you're just, if you're someone like Gary Vee, I mean, that's how he started out, was just, shooting selfie videos and just throwing them up online. But, if you've got a message or content that is valuable to people, that could be good enough. For what we do, it's definitely, more of a production where we're shooting with a crew and lights and cameras and actors and, you know, makeup and scripting beforehand and editing afterwards. That's certainly for us more of a production, but I think you get, you know, a different quality of product from that. And, you know, from a filmmaking perspective, I like making stuff that I think like looks good and it looks professional. And I think that helps, you know, people take you more seriously too, in a way. So it kind of depends on the goals and what you're going for. I think you can make something for fairly cheap. It might look cheap, but, you know, that could be a good way to at least test out your ideas and what you have to say, and, you know, get your performance chops or angle going, and then, you know, prove that it's worth, you know, bumping up in budget from there.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about the audience once again. How did you reach the first, I don't know, the first 1,000 people? Because it's a big challenge for a lot of websites to get it going. What were the, I don't know, the marketing strategies, or was it just your friends on Facebook that shared it a lot? What's the way people can start?
Yeah, I think I mean, we were fortunate. We started back in 2012, and there was less video content to compete with at that time. So I think, you know, that was an advantage that might be gone now. But yeah, I think we were lucky. The first couple of videos we made went viral out of the gate. Definitely, I guess maybe like the biggest thing that we had at the time when we launched was the mystery around who was doing it and why, and was it a joke, and or is this for real, and what was happening? Because that was a big part of the attraction at first, was people seeing, you know, our Random Parency video or our explainer video that was animated and being like, is this serious? Who's behind this? Why? What is going on here? And I think there was a lot of value promotionally that we got from that at the time, of people sort of guessing and not sure what was happening. And so I think we got, you know, I'd say at the beginning we got a lot of big names in the tech world tweeting about it, you know, like Tim Ferriss or Steve Case, or you know, the founder of Foursquare, the founders of Basecamp, you know, all like sort of mentioning it. And I think at that point, you know, when those people are all talking about something, it starts picking up traction. So we luckily at the very beginning kind of got out of the gate and spread pretty far and wide, and were able to start selling advertisers within a month after releasing our first video. So it was a pretty fortuitous sequence of events that I think would be difficult to replicate.
Yeah, I'm really glad it worked out for you.
Thank you.
Because now we have a lot of really funny videos to watch. Can you describe the process of creating, well, not only the promotional, but the process of creating a short film, a video of yours, from the very beginning till the moment it's live, till the moment it's published?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, if we're working with a client, we'll get on a call with them and, you know, talk through what their goals are and like research them a little bit and figure that out. And from there, you know, it's sort of like picking out, you know, like I said, we have a collection of sort of ideas or stories we think are funny from the real tech world, or, you know, sort of different concepts that are kicking around all the time. And so it's sort of coming up with the idea that we want. And then from there, it's collaborating. Like sometimes I'll write the episodes on my own. Sometimes I'll work with other writers that we have. And we start off with a treatment, which is sort of like a paragraph idea of like, hey, here's the idea behind the video, and make sure that that's on point. Then from there, we move to the actual scripting phase, which is like actually writing a script for the whole episode. A couple of things I mentioned, you know, to people is that we usually write too much. So if we want like a 2-minute video, we might write something that's actually like 3.5 or 4 minutes long. And then, you know, that gives us the option to edit down later, you know, kind of shoot too much and edit down to something that's briefer or funnier at a later point. Also, the script is sort of like the worst case scenario. Like everyone we work with is a comedian and they're really funny, and we like to encourage people to improvise, you know, on set and to figure things out in the moment. So I think a lot of the funniest stuff comes from, you know, letting our cast, who's, you know, are really funny people, kind of like, you know, take things in different directions. And then from there, we move to the editing phase. And that's usually, like I said, it's usually like editing something that's too long and then sort of chopping it down. A lot of times, if there is, you know, improvisation along the way, it might be like, okay, well, there's 5 different options for what this line could be, which one's the funniest, which one actually sets up what's going to happen in the rest of the episode. And from there, you know, it's usually 2 to 3 rounds of editing, and, you know, then we've got a finished product and we put it out. So it's usually about, say, 2 to 3 months from, you know, the origin of the idea to the final video being delivered.
Oh, So there must be a lot of funny videos coming up from the 3 months back. Yeah. What do you at Vooza consider a successful promotional video? After it's published, how do you know, like, a month after it's a successful one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how the client is measuring success. I mean, different people want different things. Some people are just, we want as many views as possible. Other people, like, they've got a website and they just want their site to seem a little less dry. So having, a funny video there is just like a nice humanizing thing that shows them as a company that seems a little more real and like they get it. And so sometimes for people like that, it's not about getting tons of views. It's just more about how it makes their company look. For others, it's about sales. So it might not be like they need to, get millions of views from just the general public, but if they can get, 100 enterprise, people who are, CTO or VP of marketing or someone to buy their product or to at least know about their product, then it's going to have been worthwhile for them. So for the sponsored episodes, it definitely depends on the client and what they're going for. For me personally, like I just want to make something that I'm proud of, that I think is funny, that shows off what we can do, that our team enjoys making and feels like they spent their time working on something that was worthwhile and like enables us to make more stuff in the future that we're proud of and think is good. So each video to me is sort of like a calling card of like, hey, here's what we can do for someone else, or like we want to do a good job, so someone else gives us money so we can make a video for them, or that we can make a show, or we can do something else in a way that again makes this whole world we're building kind of sustainable.
Yeah, and I have one more question from me and several questions from the audience. What are the most common mistakes people make in their promotional videos?
Bad audio, they're too long, they're too serious. It's the CEO who's a bad performer talking, too many buzzwords, and they're just boring. Everyone's boring. Stop being boring.
It's a perfect one. So also, do you think, well, yeah, the questions from the audience. Roger asks about the pro tips for elevator pitches and for pitch decks.
So like, what's my advice for elevator pitches?
Well, yeah, I guess so.
I think it goes back to a little bit what I was saying about like, so comedy is almost a philosophy, and I think you can bring it to other, like, be as brief as possible, sound human, don't use complicated language, don't use buzzwords, don't write down a quote. And like, I guess, so here's one of my biggest pet peeves is like press releases where they have a quote from like a CEO and it's so clearly a sentence that no human being ever said out loud. And I see this all the time in the tech world, because you have like analytical people who want to plan stuff out, but sometimes you can't just write it out with fancy language. And yeah, that might sound important or make you sound smart, but it's like going to just make you sound like a robot, and everyone in the room is going to be like, yeah, but that's not a real sentence that anyone says. So like, think about how to talk like a real human being is probably like the biggest thing. And then I think also, something from stand-up is, you got to open strong and close strong. So, make sure to hook people in the beginning, like in the first, 10 to 20 seconds, people are just judging you based on like, okay, who is this person? Where are they coming from? What's this going to be like? So kind of answering those questions up front, and then closing strong, because usually how you end is the thing that people remember about you.
That's really good advice. I hope it helps Roger with his pitch. And one more from Eugene. Can you tell us about the Vooza team, and really you managed to gather the incredible team of individuals? So tell us a little bit about your team. Yeah.
Sure. Everyone who's featured in the videos is also a stand-up comedian here in New York City. So all of them I've met in some capacity through doing live comedy. And there's a ton of talented performers here. And so it's been fun to kind of give them an opportunity to shine in a way that's different than just being on stage. And we also have a great director, Jesse Scaturo, who directs most of the episodes. And he's got a great crew that he works with as far as our camera and sound people. And the writers are mostly people who are featured on the show or other comedians also. So yeah, it's been really fun for me to kind of be able to, work with talented people who are out there doing good stuff, but maybe aren't getting as much exposure as, you know, I think they deserve. So being able to cast them and stuff, or give them an outlet where they get to kind of show what they can do. And so that's been part of what's really fun about the show too.
It is. So that's all the question I have for today. Thank you so much for being with us, for sharing, for doing the goofy part and for doing the serious part. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was Jeff Bell from Startup Hub, free educational project by Template Monster, and Matt Ruby from Vooza. Go check out their stuff. It's awesome. And thank you for being with us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.